Welcome to our narrated presentation by Jeff Arnold and Alberto Francisco. How does the structure of U.S. law enforcement work?
The United States government is a multifaceted, hierarchical system of courts, law enforcement, and corrections. Law enforcement involves officers who enforce the law. Courts are the systems of determining justice. Corrections handle punishment for crimes, and juvenile justice deals with minors who commit crimes.
Law enforcement. Law enforcement is made of three parts: police subculture, relationship with the community, and technology. With police subculture, law enforcement, through the eyes of the officers, involves strong loyalty and camaraderie to the force, and an oath to serve signed by all police officers. They are expected to see the world as good versus evil. Relationship with the community is very, very important for police departments. If police maintain a good relationship with their community, it will be a symbiotic relationship. The community feels safe and protected by the officers, and the officers gain valuable insight from the community. With technology, they have various things like radar, which is used by police to measure the speed of vehicles. Car and body cameras are used to document different cases or interactions, and automated license plate recognition is exactly what it sounds like. It reads license plates so that we could track down the car in the future. In law enforcement, there are 7 types of crimes. There's visible, victimless, politician, occupational, organized, transnational, and cyber crime. Visible crime is committed in public and are often seen. Victimless are illegal acts that do not have a direct victim, like drugs or gambling. Politician crimes are crimes against your government, like treason or espionage. Occupational crimes are crimes against your business, like embezzlement or fraud. Now, organized crimes are crimes involving groups, like gang activity. And transnational crime is kind of similar, but it crosses international borders, like drug trafficking or human trafficking. Cybercrime is online, so like hacking, identity theft, or malware. And a big part of law enforcement is investigations, which is studying facts of a criminal case in order to find the perpetrator. Usually involves interviewing with victims or suspects and evidence collection from the crime scene. Investigators work alongside the police department to help find the alleged suspect criminally liable.
How do courts connect? The U.S. court system is made up of 2 court systems, one that handles federal matters and the other that handles state issues. In either the state or federal court, a trial begins at the lowest respective level, that being the U.S. District Court or a state trial court. If a party disagrees with the outcome made, then they can take their case up to a higher level court, such as a state appellate court, state Supreme Court, and the U.S. Court of Appeals. If the case tackles a big and important issue that may deal with the U.S. Constitution or other federal laws, then it can be taken to the U.S. Supreme Court, which is the highest level court system found in the country. How is due process found in the U.S. court system? Due process is guaranteed by the Constitution that states fair treatment in the U.S. court system and protecting individuals from arbitrary government actions. What amendments affect the court system? The 4th Amendment states that probable cause is needed to search and seize to use material in court. The 5th Amendment states the right of the accused to due process and a grand jury indictment for serious crimes. The 6th Amendment states a fair and speedy right to a trial. The 7th Amendment states civil trial rights. The 8th, no excessive punishment and bail, and the 14th states due process and equal protection in all states. There are 2 types of crimes. Firstly, misdemeanors, which are small crimes that can be punished by less than a year in jail or sometimes just a small fine, while felonies, on the other hand, are more serious crimes and are usually punishable by over a year in state or federal prison. Criminals are sent to prison after they have been convicted in court of their charges. Here they are constantly monitored by guards and officers and are kept on a strict schedule. Here they are fed, given yard time, and constantly being overlooked.
Juvenile justice. Juvenile justice is a legal system that handles cases involving minors or people under the age of 18. Juvenile crimes are illegal acts committed by someone who is underage, below 18 years old, and juvenile justice usually focuses on rehabilitation rather than punishment like some of the normal prisons do. It's focused on the offender not committing any more crimes, or crimes that they do commit may be punished by jail time if they were an adult, but we want to change this so that it doesn't happen again. And their charges are usually read at court. There are special courts called juvenile courts for minors who commit crimes. These crimes are often punishable by misdemeanors involving probation, community service, mandatory counseling, or fines. And rehabilitation usually involves supervision and mandatory counseling. Psychologists come and speak with the offender to analyze their temperament and change their behavior so that we can reintroduce them into society. Child welfare. Juveniles who commit crimes often have not had their needs met in their childhood. For instance, poverty is a large contributor to criminal actions. Children in poverty do not always have access to clean water or nutritional food or good schools that might help them learn. If we provide children with necessary goods and services, we can protect future crimes or prevent. Programs like SNAP and TANF aim to provide these critical needs to poor children. Historical background. Courts. It all began with Federalists and Anti-Federalists in the 1700s. Each side wanted different functions of the court system, so they made a compromise. Article 3 of the Constitution established the Supreme Court and let Congress create lower courts. The Judiciary Act of 1789 declared a three-tiered court system, with a Supreme Court on top, then circuit courts and district courts. Each of these courts did different things. Circuit courts handled major trials, while district courts handled specific cases, and Supreme Court was designated as the farthest extent of the judicial system. They handled cases that smaller courts could not. So basically, our courts were meant to represent every single person in the United States, not just the will of the majority. Corrections. The idea of corrections began during the Enlightenment period, when people began favoring humane treatment rather than corporal punishment. The Penitentiary Act introduced 4 key principles in the correction system: secure and sanitary buildings, inspection systems, abolition of fees, and a reformatory regime with a focus on rehabilitation rather than punishment. This established the main platform for the prison system in the United States. Even after this act, however, there were still public executions happening around the U.S. During the 1800s, public hangings and display of body parts were a common sight, but states began to realize that it was cruel and unjust. Pennsylvania became the first state to stop public hangings in 1834, and many states joined shortly thereafter. Law enforcement. The law enforcement we see today was heavily influenced from British colonial rule with sheriffs and night watches, but was not introduced into American society until the 19th century. Slave patrols have become a popular thing in the South during the 1800s to find escaped slaves and prevent slave revolts. These patrols served as the beginning of a foundation for modern law enforcement. This was called the colonial era. First starting in major cities before spreading to smaller towns, after that the political era of policing began, where police started to get more involved with the community, like working in soup kitchens or community service. Then people began to advocate for police to be a professional force and a nonpartisan government agency. This was called the professional mode era. When police stayed out of politics, laws were equally enforced, new technology was being introduced, and police began fighting crime. Today we are in the community policing era, where police do more community service because neighborhood disorder creates fear, and allowing disorderly behavior gives the impression that police don't care about their community. Juvenile justice. The first juvenile court was found in 1899 in Chicago. This marked the beginning of an era where kids were not being treated as adults in a court trial. People believed that children who had committed a criminal act could be rehabilitated and reintroduced into society to become a contributing member. This model of juvenile court was adopted by every state rapidly, with a juvenile court in almost every state by the 1930s. Overall, many of the systems of law enforcement began in the 1700s. The United States had just been formed as a new country and needed a solid base to begin working from. This was established by the Constitution, but was preceded by the Articles of Confederation. This was the very first Constitution of the United States, which established a government that gave the majority of the power to each of the states. This, in turn, created a weak central government under which no efficient means of law enforcement could be created. In fact, the article stated that law enforcement was a duty of the states to provide to their own citizens because the weak government could not provide it themselves or even implement them, as there was no executive branch. This was a major problem in the articles and was a main reason as to why they were scrapped to what we know as a constitution.
In conclusion,
The United States government is a multifaceted, hierarchical system of courts, law enforcement, and corrections. Each of these parts work together to bring criminals to justice, beginning with law enforcement. Police apprehend the criminal and bring them to a holding cell while they wait for the court trial. From there, the person is brought before a judge and read their rights as well as their charges. Each side presents their own arguments as to why the person should be released or stay in custody. Eventually, corrections brings them into prison where they serve their sentence. In cases involving minors, they are often detained and brought before a court with a focus on rehabilitation rather than punishment. In the end, each of these parts intertwine to create what we know as our criminal justice system.
this is our works cited.